Hello candidates, I gladly welcome you to our today's learning session. This is block revision. We are going to start the revision of the fundamentals of finance paper that was done in May 2019. And candidates, before I move to answer the first question, I want to send you to go and download the 5 questions from our website, then attempt the first the questions first under exam conditions. This paper, the time allowed is 3 hours. You have to answer all questions. So go and first do this paper. Then come and see how I'll be solving the questions here on the board. That is the best way to revise. Before you come to this class, I'm sending you to first go and answer all the 5 questions in 3 hours. Take time and exam conditions, have full scopes, download this paper. You will need a calculator and a pen. Go sit down, choose a conducive place for you to answer the 5 questions. Make sure when answering the 5 questions, there are no interruptions. Switch off your phone, and when you do that, you will be in a better position to benefit more from the revision of the May 2019 paper. A good student is one who takes instructions. That is the first instruction before you come to the block revision of the May 2019 paper. So the first question reads, explain the following terms as used in finance. Roman 1, financial intermediaries, 2 marks. Roman 2, risk return trade-off, 2 marks. Roman 3, stakeholder management, 6, 2 marks. Then part B, describe 3 motives of holding inventory, 6 marks. So let us first answer part A and B, then we'll move on to answer part C, which is a question on risk and return. So candidates, this is fundamentals of finance block revision of the sitting May 2019. We are on question 1. Question 1, we have to explain the terms. A, Roman 1. The first term is financial intermediaries. Financial intermediaries. What are financial intermediaries? Candidates, a financial intermediary is a financial institution. This is a financial institution such as banks. Another example is building society. We have unit trust, etc. that holds funds from lenders in order to make loans to borrowers. So it's a financial institution that stands in between the lenders and borrowers. In an economy, you'll always have people who have excess money than they need. So this money, if you have excess money, then you would want to lend it out. And you can only lend this money out to borrowers. So the intermediary, financial intermediary, we've said examples like banks and so on. These are the financial institutions that link the borrowers to the lenders. These are financial intermediaries. So these are financial institutions. That is Roman 1. Then Roman 2, we are to explain risk-return trade-off. Risk-return trade-off. Risk-return trade-off, candidates, suggests that expected returns are proportional to the level of risk taken, and as a result, investors prefer investment projects that generate the highest return, let me say the highest rate of return, from a given level of risk. For you to get or earn a higher return, then you have to take a higher level of risk, such that the higher the risk, the higher the return. The expected return is proportional to the level of risk. If you want to go for a project whose risk is low, then you should not expect high returns. So this term risk-return trade-off suggests that expected returns are proportional to the level of risk taken, and as a result, investors prefer investment projects that generate highest rate of return from a given level of risk. Number 3, stakeholders management. 3, stakeholders or stakeholder, this is singular, stakeholder management. What is stakeholder management? First, we need to define what is the meaning of stakeholder. Stakeholder is an interested group or an interested entity in the affairs of a company. Okay? These are groups that have interests in a company because the decisions that the company makes affects them. or the decision that they make may affect the company. So a stakeholder comprised of either individuals or even groups, or groups who are affected by organization's activities or who can affect its achievement of objectives. Okay? And this would include the shareholders, the management, the employees, the government, the members of the public, and so on. So that is the meaning of stakeholder. Here we need to explain stakeholder management. Learners, stakeholder management refers to the policy towards all interested groups, all interested groups that have a stake in the enterprise. Is a policy statement, is a guideline. Policy is simply a broad guideline. Is a guideline that states or stipulates how the interests of these groups or individuals will be taken care of or will be managed. So that is the meaning of stakeholders management. Then that will mark the end of part A. That is part A. Candidates were expected to explain, and each explanation would earn the candidate 2 marks. So this is 2 marks, 2 marks, 2 marks, total 6 marks. Total 6 marks. Then coming to part B, describe 3 motives of holding inventory. 6 marks. 3 what? 3 motives of holding inventory. These motives should not be confused by the motives of holding money or cash. The question is specific. 3 motives of holding inventory. Part B, 3 motives of holding inventory. 3 motives of holding inventory. The first motive is precautionary motive. The second motive is speculative motive. The third motive is transaction motive. 3 motives. 1, transaction motive. 2, precautionary motive, and speculative. 3. So the question is, describe the 3 motives. The first one I've said, let's begin with transaction. Transaction motive. What is it all about? The reason for holding cash, candidates, the motive for holding not cash but inventory, the motive for holding cash, what are the reasons, what are the motives that would lead an enterprise to hold inventories or stocks? One is transaction motive. What is it all about? Now, the reason why an organization would hold inventory is transaction motive, which means the motive would be to avoid what we call bottlenecks. Bottlenecks in its production. These are unnecessary stoppages. You would need, if you want to have continuous production of products or goods, then you need to have continuous supply of raw materials, because you cannot produce finished goods unless you have raw materials. So a company would require raw materials, which will then be processed or converted into finished goods. So one important motive of holding inventories, having inventories in store, holding inventory means storing inventory, is to ensure that there are no bottlenecks, there are no stoppages in production, no stoppages in production. By maintaining inventories, we can say, by maintaining inventories, the enterprise ensures that production is not interrupted, and also, and we can say, sales are not unavailable, because there are two things here. There should be no interruption in supply of raw materials. If there is no interruption of supply of materials, then there will be no interruption of availability of finished goods. So there are two ways or reasons or perspectives. There is the aspect of the raw material and finished goods. Then the second motive is the precautionary motive. Number two, precautionary motive. Precautionary motive. Now, the reason an enterprise should hold inventory is to cushion the enterprise, or the company, against unpredicted business. Sometimes business may not be predictable. You may not know or be 100% sure that tomorrow you'll have raw materials. There may be what we call shortages, unexpected shortages in supply of raw materials. So a prudent organization would hold inventories to cushion the company against such shortages of raw materials in the market. Here we are talking about situations like unforeseen slump in the supply of raw materials. So to avoid against such unpredicted business, then the company should hold inventories. Then the third motive, number three, is this is transaction precautionary. Then number three, speculative motive. The company may hold inventory so as to take advantage of advantage of price fluctuations. For example, if the prices of raw materials are expected to increase, then it may be prudent for the company to buy raw materials beforehand, before the increase in prices. These are fluctuations. So again, the prices of the raw materials may also reduce. Okay, if the prices of raw materials are expected to reduce, then the company should hold few quantities of inventories, so that when the prices are lowered, the company will buy the raw materials at a lower price than previous prices. So these are the motives of holding inventories. And you may have this, that's 2 marks, 2 marks, 2 marks, total 6 marks. You may have noticed that the motives of holding inventory are the same, okay, in terms of the headings, but the explanation is different. So there are 3 motives of holding inventory, that is transaction motive, precautionary motive, speculative motive. There are also 3 main motives of holding cash or money, that is transaction motive, precautionary motive, speculative motive. The same headings, but the explanation different. So make sure you revise on the motives of holding cash or money. So having done part A and B, we can now move on to answer part C. Let me read it. It says, Zeltex Limited shares cost 120 shillings each and pay no dividends. All right. The possible prices that the company's shares might sell for at the end of the year with the respective probabilities are provided below. So we have the prices and the probabilities that are provided in the 2 columns required. Roman 1, the expected return of the company's shares, 4 marks. Roman 2, standard deviation of return, 4 marks. So candidates will first answer part C, Roman 1, the expected return of the company's shares. The expected return of the company's shares. Expected return of the company's shares. This is C Roman 1. The expected return, expected return of the company's shares will be equal to the summation of the probability times the expected return. Okay, so we'll have a table, present this in a table, price in shillings, price in shillings, 115, 120, 125, 130, 135, 140. Price in shillings. Then I'll have the probabilities. Probabilities or probability, PI. The probabilities are given in the question: 0.1, 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.2, 0.1, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. So we will multiply the probabilities with respective prices, So I'll have 115, it's 115 times 0.1. It's 11.5. This is 12.0. And I have 125 times 0.2. It's 25.0. I have 130 times 0.3. 130 times 0.3. 39.0. I'll have 135 times 0.2. This 0 there. It's 27.0. Then 0.1 times 140, 14.0. This is PI times expected return. It's expected return. So we will get the summation, and that will be the expected return. So we'll sum 11.5 plus 12 plus 25 plus 39 plus 27 plus 14 is equal to 128.5. So the expected return is equal to 128.5 shillings. These are how many marks? These are 4 marks. These are how many marks? 4 marks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's a mark for that one. Some mark there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 4 marks. 4 marks. Each tick, half a mark. So that is part 1. This should be part 1. It's part 2? It's part 1. Yes, part 1. So let's answer part 2. It says standard deviation of return, another 4 marks. Standard deviation of return, 4 marks. So candidates, I will need this space to answer, to calculate the standard deviation. Standard deviation. So, standard deviation, part 2, standard deviation, which is equal to, sometimes you write it as SD, standard deviation, or we use that symbol. And the standard deviation for this return, the standard deviation of the return will be equal to the square root of the summation of the probability times the actual return minus the expected return squared. So we'll use that formula to calculate the standard deviation. So we have the price, have another table, shillings, 115 120, 125, 130, 135, and 140. These are prices. Then the probabilities, PI, 0.1, 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.2, 0.1, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. Then candidates, another column we need here is the deviations. We need to calculate the deviation. The deviation is actual return. This is the actual return minus the expected return, which we've calculated here, 128.5. We have that column. Then we'll have another column for PI times actual return minus expected return squared. So I can now go ahead and subtract 115, this 115 minus the expected return of 128.5. It's minus 113.5. Next it's 120, this 120 minus 128.5 is equal to negative 8.5. Then 125 minus 128.5 is negative 3.5. 130 minus 128.5 is 1.5 positive. 135 minus 128.5, 6.5. 140 minus 128.5 is 11.5. 11.5. So we will square the deviation, then multiply by the standard deviation. We square this deviation. These are deviations because we are getting the difference between the actual and the expected. This is the expected return. So we will square 13.5 squared times 0.1. This is equal to 18.225. Next I have 8.5 square times 0.1, 7.225. Next 3.5 squared times 2.45. Next I have 1.5 squared times 0.3, 0.675. Next 6.5 squared times 0.2, 8.45. Lastly 11.5 square times 0.1, 13.225. So we get the summation. We add. This is what we are adding. So 13.225 plus 8.45 plus 0.675 plus 2.45 plus 7.225 plus 18.225. Answer is 50.25. Remember, these are shillings. So shillings are not percentage. So the standard deviation will be the square root of 50.25. Square root of 50.25, the square root of 50.25, this will be equal to, the square root is 7.088. That is the standard deviation, and that is the end of that question. How many marks? These are 4 marks. 4 marks. 4 marks. 4 marks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. These are marks. 4 marks. So candidates in an exam, after having done enough practice, you don't need to go through all these writings, because you can see this price I already had a column here for price. I'm writing it that way so that you can see clearly and understand. But in an exam, you don't have to repeat this column here and that column there. In an exam, because you are also being tested on speed, you should avoid repeating. Okay, so here, if I was an exam, I would just come here and have the column P, I, probability, actual return minus expected return squared. So all I needed to answer part 2 is to have this formula here, because the probability I have it here, the actual return I have it here, the expected return I have it here. This is supposed to be square root. Okay. Then the answer after summing, because this is summation, after getting the summation of the probability times the square root of these deviations, the sum here, okay, the sum here, which in our case there is 50.25, just come here and get the square root of that, because the calculator again you have it. So that all those working are not necessary. You don't earn marks by repeating such columns. But I only did that for the purposes of understanding. But in an exam, you need to be saving time and earn the marks. And you can only do that if you've had enough practice. Candidates, this is your revision partner. In this book, we've summarized enough questions for you under this topic of risk and return. There are how many questions? We have 17 questions. 17 questions. Some of them are past paper questions. This topic was introduced recently in the fundamentals of finance syllabus, but we have gathered more other questions which can help you revise in this topic. So make sure you answer all the 17 questions in this book before doing your exams, the forthcoming exams. Make sure you've done all the questions in this book. You'll have enough practice to enable you answer these questions in a very short time. Very short time. These are marks that you need to scoop very easily. You can only do that by practicing. So thank you for being attentive. This was our first lesson in answering the questions that were tested in May 2019. I told you before you come to this revision, make sure you do these questions. Those who obeyed, you must have seen where you went wrong, because I expect you to mark your work as we are moving on to answer the question. So in our next lesson, we are going to answer the second question. Thank you and bye-bye.